Hello, everybody, and welcome to the XP Billionaires 2019 Game of the Year Spectacular.
Woo!
Woohoo!
Awesome. That's the kind of sound I was hoping for. All
Woo!
right. All right. This is Ray Fegram, and as you can hear, I've got Sky Knight and Irene Rogue with me as I usually do. And Sky, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm good. I'm comfortable in talking about video games. You
Who
know,
could ask for more?
exactly.
Awesome. Awesome. I love it. And Irene, how are you doing today?
Not too bad, not too bad. I've got a cat, I've got video games. I think I'm good.
Excellent. Excellent. That's a good combo. I love it. So, as we said, this is our 2019 Game of the Year Spectacular. But what that also means, unfortunately, this is the last episode of the XP Billionaires for 2019. It's unfortunate, but rest assured, we will be back in the new year to give you so much more. Do not worry about that. We got lots more in the pipeline, still plenty of RPG talk to do, and we will be back for sure. But in the meantime, you guys probably want to hear what we think were some of the best games of this year, don't you? So we're going to end off our year the same way we ended off last year. So we're going to give out our picks for the top game of the year. However, 2019 has been an excellent year for RPGs. So for me, I don't know about you guys, but it was really hard to pick just one. So we're going to do a runner up along with our game of the year. But wait, there's more. We're also going into a brand new decade in 2020, which means we got to decide for our top games of the decade.
Oh God.
I know that one probably hurt the most having to think of that one. I had to do a lot of research to find out what games came out when. But yeah, so we're going to do that too today. So we're going to give you a runner up for this year, our top game of the year, and our top game of the decade. I think I've wasted enough time explaining it, so we should get started. So, for our runners up, I'm going to have Irene start us off.
Okay, so for my runner-up, I picked Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. So I backed this game ages ago on Kickstarter. Oh God, ages and ages ago. And I was not sorry for doing so in the slightest. Honestly, it feels like a warm favorite sweater in all the right ways. Now, I didn't play a ton of Metroidvanias as a kid, but the ones I did play I enjoyed immensely. And Bloodstained takes everything that was good about those games and modernizes it ever so slightly. So there's a great story, there's a really interesting protagonist, the battle and combat feels really fluid. You have, almost endless numbers of customization abilities and ways to improve your character, different move sets, different weapon sets. There's a whole bunch of cool shit that you can do with your character as you progress further and further through the game. The flexibility that it allows you as you move through the, well, giant structure is really interesting. And the art style is actually really nice. I kind of dig the whole like old stained glass look it's got going for it as well. Visually, it's really interesting. Igarashi really kind of cemented himself as the king of this genre a little bit with this particular release because as we've seen with other, spiritual successor type games like with Ukulele and with Mighty Number 9, they didn't go so hot. Not even a little bit. And for a while there, I was concerned that Bloodstained was going to take the same route. But it did not, and it is an excellent game that I would eagerly recommend to anybody.
All right, awesome, awesome. All right, next runner up will be mine. So my runner up was Judgment. This was a fantastic spin-off to the Yakuza series. I mean, the gameplay itself wasn't that much different from your typical Yakuza game. There were two things that really stood out about it. First, the main story was just as well written, suspenseful, engaging, enticing, just made me want to keep playing as any other game that RGG Studio has come out with. This was a serial murder case that turned into a huge government conspiracy. Like, this was just as good as your typical mystery novel. The second thing is that because Yagami was a private eye, the side quests felt way more compelling, and I was more interested in doing more of them just because of that fact. Like Kiryu would just walk around the street and random shit would just happen to him. While that would also happen to Yagami, at least this way he could like take a case during this interaction and actually get paid for it. So it actually felt a little more real that these situations would happen to him, or you would be taking cases from your case board, that kind of thing. It just felt right. So plus the whole concept of like all the people you'd meet in the city where you'll be gaining new contacts, making friends, like that's a real detective thing to do, having these kind of people to rely on to do some legwork for you when you need to. So out of all of the games that I played this year, this was one of the greater ones, and there's only one other game that's beat it out. And you'll find out about that one in a second. In the meantime, let's move on to Sky. Let's find out what Sky's got for their runner-up.
So, surprising exactly no one. My runner-up is Atelier Ryza.
Actually,
It,
that is surprising because it's a runner-up.
yeah, this game blew me away, honestly.
I
And
was gonna say both of your runner-ups are surprising to me. What the fuck else did you play?
some damn good stuff. This was a fine year for gaming.
Apparently.
Yeah, I was blown away by Atelier Ryza. The cast is so wonderfully relatable. The environments are gorgeous, and God, did I spend so much time in the alchemy system. So much time. Because it was experimental and fascinating, and the recipes were flexible in a way that they haven't been before. Every recipe was kind of like a flowchart, and you had to start somewhere, but as you branched out, you could choose directions to branch out in to get different abilities or add certain features, that sort of thing. Really interesting way to go about it. And there's some new features too, like being able to customize your atelier to change like the walls and the floors and the exterior and put different rugs down on the floor and that sort of thing, you know? It made it feel so much more personal, which I thought was really cool. And all the different gathering tools, which meant you could go to a gathering spot and use different gathering tools on the same spot and get different items.
Oh,
Which,
that's cool.
yeah, it totally awesome addition to the system. And I really felt engaged with it in a way I haven't since Atelier Iris Eternal Mana. They kept all the best of Atelier in this game and improved upon it. This just blew my mind.
That's cool.
Awesome, awesome. All right. Well, those are just the runners up. If we're that excited about those, you can only imagine what the games of the year are going to be. So let's get on that. So Irene, what is your 2019 RPG of the year?
My 2019 top pick of the year has to go to Code Vein. To give you some background, I've always said my major complaint with the Soulsborne games, like Dark Souls and Bloodborne, is that they don't actually put the story in the game. It's in the item descriptions, it's in the lore, it's in like extra material online. And while the games are very satisfying to play, there's not a lot of like, why am I doing this? Why is this boss so impressive? Why is it a boss character? Like, what is the significance of this? And it's never really in the game. And while it doesn't actually stop me from enjoying it, I think my enjoyment would be increased by that. Well, Code Vein and the makers, Namco Bandai, readily accepted this challenge, and I say they nailed it. The story is essentially about vampires who were manufactured in order to fight the queen vampire when she lost herself and basically destroyed what was left of the world after an apocalyptic event. Like, there's a lot of like layers upon layers of sort of like anime weirdness going on in this game. Like the vampires, they're clearly vampires, but they're called something else. And like everything has the modifier blood in front of it because vampires. Ha! I'm not going to say it's not cheesy in some ways. It's not like super morbid, But either way, you play as a character that somehow has the ability to revive springs full of, like, food, essentially, for the vampires that have all since dried up. And you encounter a small band of folks who are looking to actually fix this problem so that they can stop fighting amongst themselves and strive for peace with the humans, because if they can secure a stable and reliable, like, source of food, then they don't have to feed on people or fight with each other. What this character looks like, I'm sure as you've heard me gushing on Twitter, it's entirely up to you. The character creator is amazing. I spent hours and hours just playing with the character creator. I made, like, my different tabletop RPGs character in it, and I just went ham and made cool things according to a color scheme. I think I have a character for every color scheme, and there are just so many color options. Colors and patterns and glowing and metallic, and, like, you can arrange stuff, you can resize stuff, you can move them all over your body so that you can, like, position things just the right spot. Like, you can really come up with some cool creations with that character creator, and I am very satisfied with it. Like, and the customization is, like, really a big theme in this game. It extends all the way into the combat system, where you can equip different blood codes from other vampires to learn their abilities. For example, if you want, like, a big hack and slash, like, big heavy weapon smash, you go with, like, the Atlas blood code or the Fionn blood code, because they specialize in wielding two-handed weaponry. But, like, you can play any style you want, really, because once you've actually mastered the abilities within that blood code, they can be used in any other blood code, so long as you meet the stat requirements. Which, like, if you're playing a certain style, is not hard. So, like, what I basically have builds that are like, oh, well, I have these two abilities. I'm using the Atlas, but I've got these 3 abilities from Fionn that I really, really like that I'm just tacking on here. And this one ability from this, like, magical class that is excellent because it has great support. Like, it drowns you in blood codes. I think I have got, like, I must have something like 20 at this point, and I'm not done. And I have so many abilities that I can just mix and match to create a playstyle that is, like, essentially just unique. When I started writing up, like, what I wanted to talk about this episode, I really didn't think I was going to go in this direction. But I've played Code Vein a lot this year, and I've really thoroughly enjoyed it, from its sort of over-the-top anime narrative to the character design to the world design to the weaponry, to the armor. Like, it's all incredibly well done, and I think I would totally be interested in playing a sequel or something else, like similar mechanics but with a different, like, coat of paint on it from Namco Bandai. And for those of you who make, like, custom character creators, pay attention. That thing is cool as fuck.
You had me at customization.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me while I clean up a pool of drool.
Oh yeah. Like, I've got so many blood codes, and I can just, like, go, okay, I'm going to grab this here and that there, but while I'm mastering this, I would really like to have this support ability. Also, this boss breathes fire, so I'm going to grab my fire shield. Like, you can have anywhere up to, like, 8 abilities.
Stop! I can only be so aroused.
Okay. Okay, I'll be merciful.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. I guess it's up to me to see if I can top that. I don't think I can top that in as many words, but I still think I've got a fantastic game of the year. So my RPG for 2019 is The Legend of Heroes Trails of Cold Steel 3, surprising very few people, I'm sure. I had a feeling this was going to be my game of the year before it even came out, just based on how much I enjoyed the last 2 games and all the other games that I've played so far in the series. Like, once again, Falcom has just delivered another intense and incredible story that feels like I hadn't stopped playing, even though it had been months between games. All of the Class 7 reunion scenes that I've encountered so far have been touching, and even though it's only been a few months since I've played between the games, they still really hit you where like they get you right in the feels. I cannot stress enough how much how wonderful it is when all of basically Reen's harem decide to just go up and give him these really, really long and intimate hugs while his new class members, his new students are basically looking at him awkwardly. And the combat is still just as solid and challenging as the other games, and it's even more fun with these new class 7 members that you're now instructing in this game. And again, like it as far as the entire series is gone, but even in this game, with all these new characters, there's still no character in this series that I inherently dislike. The caveat is there is a possible exception now that I've recently cleared chapter 3 of the game. There's someone I may not be overly fond of right now, but the jury is still out on that because it's left in a shroud of mystery. For those of you who've gotten that far, I think you know what I'm talking about. But one way or the other, this story keeps me on the edge of my seat, and I am at this point I'm just desperately waiting for the localization announcement for the final game in the series. They're doing one more for Cold Steel to cap it all off, but I know it's not going to be the end of the Trails storyline.
That's really cool. I was actually really surprised to hear that Judgment didn't get your top spot.
It certainly would have if I didn't get into this series by now, because oh my god, like you have to understand too, this is only 4 games in, like, well, the Cold Steel is going to be 4 games, but there's also 3 games that were released for PC and originally PSP called Trails in the Sky that are connected.
Yeah,
There were
I've got Trails in the Sky 1, actually.
Yeah, there were 2 games that didn't even make it to the West that were also for the PSP. However, there have been fan translations of the game, which I'm looking forward to. And those 2 games are actually happening at the same time as Trails of Cold Steel 1 and 2.
Huh.
Like, this world is so beautifully interconnected. It does its job better than Suikoden could, and it was one of the best worlds made in the past as well. I unfortunately I have to dethrone it personally. Sky, I know you're going to argue with me on that for a long time, and I apologize, but like this world has just been built, in my opinion, so much stronger. And that's not to say that Suikoden did a bad job.
Well, no, and you have to understand that, Konami owns Suikoden and it's Konami.
Yeah,
Yeah, honestly, based on the Konami's output in the last few years, we should just be thankful they've forgotten they own Suikoden.
that's probably fair. But yeah, so that's mine. Obviously, I want more, and maybe if we get the localization, my 2020 game of the year will be Trails 4. But well, we'll wait and see on that one. In the meantime, it's time for Sky to reveal their RPG of 2019.
All right. Well, I hummed and hawed a lot, but I finally landed on Fire Emblem Three Houses. And it gets my pick because it manages to do just about everything right. It's accessible to newcomers, but still has challenging modes for series vets. It has a very cool branching storyline with real choices that affect the story, and lots of interesting character choices, people to recruit. So the replayability factor is very high. The school setting is well implemented. It's actually set inside of an old monastery. So it's like these huge stone structures. The school is huge. It's a massive environment. And it's well implemented without being obnoxious or juvenile, which I really like. And it gives you lots of fun ways to interact with the characters. You can invite them to tea. There's some sparring. There's a sparring competition. There's all sorts of different stuff you can do. You can dine with them in the dining hall, and there's all sorts of other little things you can do around the school, like fishing, and running around finding lost items and returning them to students to up their relationship with you.
Which is good.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's nice to be the cool
Yes.
teacher.
Yeah. Yeah, you definitely get the option of being the cool teacher. Um, I really like how they've expanded the traditionally very linear Fire Emblem formula this time by giving us this space where we can run around between maps. Where we have all this interaction, the doing the unit development, like the customization through teaching classes because you're a professor, right? It's all very well implemented, and if I hadn't had so many games demanding my time this year, I would have already done a second playthrough. I've only been through once, so I went with Edelgard of the Black Eagles for my first run through. So I have to say, kudos to Intelligent Systems for absolutely killing it this time around. And one final personal note. Thank you for letting me pair female Byleth and the Edelgard, because my queer heart wanted it so bad.
All right. So those are the games of 2019. But we did promise you one last thing. So it's time for us to go over our games of the decade. Irene, what is your game of the decade?
So this took me a while to figure out. I hummed and hawed and looked up the year Kingdom Hearts was released, and turned out I was at least 18 years too late.
A little bit.
Yeah, previous game of the previous decade, and like thought really long and hard about it because I couldn't quite figure out how to approach this question. But then when I started to think of, the games that influenced me the most, that I spent a lot of time with, that have, opened up my preferences and like opened up my repertoire for gaming a little wider, I'd have to give it to Borderlands, and Borderlands 2 specifically. And I know I talk about it a lot on this podcast, but that's because I've played nearly 200 hours of Borderlands 2. I've played through with multiple characters, with multiple sets of friends, and I never get tired of playing it. And what the big thing was with Borderlands for me was that it was an introduction to a genre that I thought was a waste before. Like, I wasn't interested in first person shooters because they generally didn't have great stories, they didn't have interesting characters. Borderlands, and specifically Borderlands 2, sort of showed me that the first person shooter genre can be way more than just what my narrow definition of it was. And that got me into playing stuff like BioShock, which was an incredible experience and very interesting, like from a thematic perspective and from a story perspective, extremely well done. Like I met one of my best friends playing Overwatch last year. Like, right. So this is a genre that basically I hadn't been exposed to at all, and because I played Borderlands, I was suddenly much more willing to sort of like dip my toe into this whole sea, because it's PvE, which means that I don't have to worry about being like competitive with other people, but also it was story driven and character driven and interesting, and the world was really well built and somewhat sad in a way when you think about all the rampant corporatism that's going on. And of course, the game does not endorse the rampant corporatism. The rampant corporatism is often seen as a terrible, terrible fucking thing. But, like, try and get them to stop is a bit of an issue since they all have private armies. Anyway, so if I think of like my gaming decade, I wanted to talk about a game that sort of like opened my mind up to new possibilities. And from taking that perspective over the last 10 years, like that is the game that I think really did that for me. You know?
No, absolutely. It opens you up to something new, which is great. And, look where it's gotten you. And you're right. It is very well built set of games with really colorful worlds and colorful characters. So that's an awesome choice for your game of the decade. So,
Yeah,
all right.
considering how much I
Pretty-
talk about it, yeah, I couldn't
yeah,
give it to anything else.
yeah, well, compared to mine, it's going to be really weird. But yeah, well, mine's going to be weird, I should say. So we'll get on that. So my game of the decade, again, after long and hard thought, my game of the decade is Pokemon Omega Ruby.
Oh wow.
Yeah, not many games in the Pokemon series or in general have really sucked me into their post game the way that Omega Ruby did. In my opinion, this was the height of the series. Now, don't get me wrong, I love Sword and Shield, but this is me spending hundreds of hours, literal hundreds of hours playing into this game. So I also have to give a special shout out to X and Y because it introduced the two mechanics that helped make this game as enjoyable as it was for me. The first was being Mega Evolution, which, in my opinion, has been the best specialty mechanic the series has ever done. And the other was Super Training, which allowed somebody like me who was never really interested in the competitive scene to really look at getting into it with a lot more ease. And the fact that it made that foray into competitive play that much more accessible to people. I thought that was a really, really good thing. I had a short-lived competitive career while I was playing it. I played every online competition I could, and in between, I was always trying to breed high IV Pokemon, creating move sets. And then when I wasn't doing that, I was in online communities doing what was called Wonder Trade Wednesday, where I would, breed silly higher IV Pokemon that most people wouldn't use and just throw them out on Wonder Trades. I'd get back some really weird stuff too. Like I'd get back some random shinies that people were sending out and some other cool competitive things that people were doing that I could actually build on my own, which was really cool. So before the release of Sun and Moon, I had basically clocked over 400 hours into my copy of Ruby with I had completed the national decks and I had received my first ever shinies through breeding, and those two were Tyrogue and Litwick. No other game in the last 10 years, no matter how good it was, had compelled me to keep going the same way that I did with Pokemon Omega Ruby, so that's why it stands above all the others.
Yeah, you really got into that one. To be fair, I think that was sort of to me that always seemed to be the best use of the online features was in that one.
Yeah, no, there absolutely was, and I put this on here even though Omega Ruby is technically a remake of an older Pokemon title, but there was a lot of extra post-game content with double the amount of Pokemon. I feel like it qualifies as its own game at this point, so that's that. Well, at least that's my justification for why it's on here.
No, fair enough.
All right, so we've got one last game of the decade to go, and that is coming from you, Sky. What did you pick?
I picked Xenoblade Chronicles, the first one. There isn't really any other game that comes close for me. Nothing that blew me away the way Xenoblade Chronicles did. What's really struck me about this world is that I had never played or seen anything like it before. The fact that you're playing a game where your world is on the backs of two dead gods, like frozen standing, and life has sprung up upon these gods. So you just get these incredible vistas. Like you can, most of the time, you're so small that it doesn't feel like you're standing on the shoulders of a god, right? You can't see far enough. But if you get to a cliffside and look down, sometimes, or up, depending on where you are on the body, you can suddenly realize, holy crap, that's that's a sword. That giant valley that you cross at one point, it's actually the sword of a god. Or, you look across and you can see the head of the other god across the world, and it's amazing. Monolith Soft has proven themselves the masters of environment development, creating these huge, elaborate worlds filled with detail and interesting locations that feel really organic. Like, I would go back to areas again and again and find new places to go, new things to do every time. It's secret locations that where you can look out into an area and you're just like, holy crap, I can basically see Niagara Falls from here. Yes, there is like a Niagara Falls-esque location, and
That's cool.
it is amazing. Yeah, like nothing else has quite hit me for in that way in terms of a world to explore. On top of this, the plot is emotional and powerful. You have to give it some time. Like, it takes a while to get there, but it's worth the wait, and the characters are really good. The other thing I thought that was really unique about it is that it took MMO style combat, put it in a single player experience, and then introduced this future sight mechanic with the protagonist's sword, the Minato, where he gets these visions of a party member dying and therefore gets a chance to prevent it from happening. It's such an interesting element that I hadn't seen. I hadn't seen anything like it in gaming up until that point, and I was just like, this is really cool. And the game continues to reward you as you go throughout with interesting people and locations and varied locations. I mean, one of the two gods is like this biomechanical entity, basically. So it's when you're traveling through that part of the world, it all looks like, big elaborate factories and stuff like that. Meanwhile, you've spent the first half of the game exploring like plains and jungles and very organic places. Like, the variety is quite amazing, and it's all together in one game, in one package, and this is why it stands out for me. There's an awful lot to like here.
That's interesting.
And it's coming out on Switch next year.
Yeah, honestly, that's great because I missed Xenoblade the first time around. So, looking forward to an opportunity to play it again.
It'll be worth it. When I saw the Nintendo Direct trailer for what they're calling it the definitive edition of the game, and it looked so beautiful, and I cried. I actually cried at a game trailer.
Looking forward to that then, for
Yeah,
sure.
it's amazing. So yeah, game of the decade for me.
All right. So those were our picks for the top RPGs of 2019 as well as the 2010s. I want to hear what you guys think about it and what your game for 2019 was. You can find me on Twitter at Billionaires XP, and you can find me on Instagram at Ray Fegram. And I will be streaming typically on Wednesdays, 7 p.m. Eastern. Sky, where can everyone find you?
I'm at SkyKnightXP on Twitter and Twitch, SkyKnight.xp on Instagram, and you can find me streaming Tuesdays, 7 p.m. Eastern.
And Irene, where can everyone find you?
You can find me at irogue_XP on Twitter and Twitch, and I normally stream on Thursdays at 7 p.m.
And we've got our website, xpbillionaires.wordpress.com, for our transcripts, written articles, and updates of new episodes. This may be the last one, but there's going to be more in the new year. Don't forget that. We're coming back. And we'll find out more about that by checking out our newsletter, which will be coming up on our coffee page. That will be at coffee.com/xpbillionaires. Tis the holiday season, of course, so if you feel like sending a donation our way to help us for next year, we would absolutely love that. But again, just make sure you share all these episodes with your friends so that they get to bask in our warmth. Well, it pains me to say that this is going to be the end of our season for 2019. I want to thank everyone for listening, and I do want to thank my co-hosts for toughing this out for over a year and a half now. So thank you to everyone. My last piece of advice for this year, you guys, make sure that you be good so that you're gifted everything you need to keep gaming into the new year. Take care, guys.
Bye.
Bye bye.